ABC. The first year of my doctorate's kind of winding down, so I figured now I actually have some time to make a video for you guys. My collecting habits have been a little peculiar this semester. For the past couple of months, I've mostly been collecting jazz. I've just been getting into and listening to more and more jazz. I think partially because so many great VC channels are out there that focus on jazz, and it's taught me a lot. And I've been able to, go on YouTube, listen to stuff, see if I like it, check out all music, check out reviews and things like that. And just being an audiophile, there's a lot of really great audiophile pressings of jazz out there right now. It's a rich market for people that are into jazz music. So that's mostly what I've been collecting, but I do have a few non-jazz titles that I've been collecting over the past few months too. So I'm just going to go through those really quickly. Do some rock first. This is a really special pressing. This is a new reissue of Tube Lord's debut full-length album, Our First American Friends. Take it out of the jacket. It's kind of got a glare. Tube Lord were a band from England. They were kind of a math rock-ish pop band. Really great riffs and hooks and intensity in their sound. This is kind of a lesser-known band that I just discovered maybe about a year or so ago. But they were in a very similar camp to other bands that were associated with that scene at the time, like Meet Me in St. Louis or This Town Needs Guns, bands like that. So if you like This Town Needs Guns or Meet Me in St. Louis, you'll probably like Tube Lord. And what's cool about this pressing is that they made this, so there was one other vinyl pressing of this that came out years ago. And for this pressing, someone from the band sent the record label a test pressing, and they actually, some of the black that's in here is actually pieces of that original test pressing pressed into this new record. I thought that was kind of cool. Up next, we got two albums that I have no idea why they weren't already in my collection. I had a good pressing of the debut album, but I didn't have good pressings of these. I only had them on CD. And, this is stuff that I listened to very regularly in high school and my undergrad. So we have original U.S. pressings of Rage Against the Machine, Evil Empire, and Battle of Los Angeles. The recent reissues of these have not been met that well, except for I hear people really like the music on vinyl reissues, because the music on vinyl reissues of these were done from the original metal plates of the European editions. But these are relatively affordable for first US pressings, so I figured I'd just get the original, because I really do love these albums, especially Evil Empire. I think Evil Empire is my favorite Rage Against the Machine album. This next record is a record that had been on my list to get for a while. I just had been putting it off. And then, a little while back, Dolores O'Rourke passed away, and I realized I had to get this quickly. And I'm, of course, talking about the Cranberries' debut album. Everyone else is doing it, so why can't we? This is an incredible alternative rock album that really highlights the vocals of Dolores O'Rourke that are just so unique. She has her own vocal style that really can't be imitated, and it's really heavenly to listen to. She kind of envelops the sound of the band. And this is really, really well done by Analog Spark, the audiophile sub-label of Razor and Tie. This is just a great pressing, sounds amazing from the original analog tapes. This is an all analog pressing. And I've just been more and more impressed with Analog Spark over the last year or so. They haven't put out much yet, but what they do put out is incredible, and they pick really diverse things. Like I also have the Ella Fitzgerald box set that they put out. I have the Dave Brubeck Jazz Goes to College. Just great work by them. Only two classical records that I bought recently. One is the Speaker's Corner reissue of Lalo Symphony Espagnole and the Rebelle. I never know how to pronounce this piece. The Rebelle Cigane? I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. This is a very famous Decca record that an original wideband Decca pressing of this is quite expensive. It's considered an audiophile gem. And so, of course, the way to go with this is probably the Speaker's Corner reissue, which sounds incredible. I was really impressed with the sound of this album. And we got another kind of audiophile showpiece. We have Richard Strauss's Symphonie Domestica by Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphony. This is a Classic Records reissue of the original Victrola. So the funny thing about this recording is it was recorded during the Living Stereo era, RCA Living Stereo. but it was never issued then. It was only issued later as a Victrola record when they were reissuing the original Living Stereo records under the Victrola catalog. But Classic Records reissued this from the original tapes, and it sounds really good. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra sounds great here. There's a lot of really great brass moments. It's really a showpiece for the Chicago Symphony brass section, which were then and still are one of the best brass sections in the world. And that's it. That's all the rock and classical I collected, because everything else is jazz, and I've been collecting a lot of it because I've just been kind of diving down the rabbit hole a little bit more. The big thing that's here that I have to talk about is the Analog Productions Riverside Thelonious Monk's Box Set. This thing is awesome. It was mastered by Doug Sax when he was still alive. This thing is actually from a couple years ago. I just saw that Acoustic Sounds recently got it back in stock, and I thought, hey, this is probably the cheapest this box set's ever going to be. And so many of these albums are not really available in standalone good editions, like Brilliant Corners or Monk with Coltrane. They're just not available in good pressings affordably. So the box set really makes sense because they got, a good chunk of the Monk discography. The only Thelonious Monk album that I actually owned before this was Underground, which is a great album, but it's not considered like his classic canon, like his really best albums. And this box set has a lot of his best albums. So we got, Brilliant Corners here, Monk's music, Thelonious Monk with John Coltrane. This one is incredible. Thelonious in Action. Mysterioso. Five by Five. And of course, Thelonious Monk live at the Black Hawk. So really incredible and comprehensive box set of some of Monk's best albums. Very enjoyable. The masterings sound great. The jackets are really well done. And the booklet that comes with it is really nice too. It was kind of like hitting the easy button for my journey into Thelonious Monk. So I already have a somewhat respectable Coltrane collection, but I'm always adding things. Coltrane put out a crazy amount of records for just how short his career was. So I picked up the Analog Productions Prestige reissue of Coltrane's Lush Life. This is great, kind of an underrated album in his early catalog. Paul Chambers plays on side B, and I love his bass playing. Another Coltrane album here. We got the ORG reissue of Coltrane Sound. This is a cool little quirky album. It's a double 45 that sounds great. And we have the Analog Productions reissue of Coltrane on Impulse. I love the Analog Productions Impulse series. Impulse put out some really cool cutting-edge jazz in the 60s, and the Analog Productions series that they've done. It's been incredible. Long ago, I got the Mingus albums that were on Impulse through Analog Productions, and they're just great. So, recently, I'm a big fan of Sonny Rollins. I like his saxophone playing immensely. Probably my favorite sax player. And recently, the new deluxe reissue of Way Out West came out and got pretty bad reviews by people for sound quality because it was cut from the digital files. So that inspired me to go hunt down an analog copy. And the analog copy that I got was the Analog Productions, I think it was from the mid-90s. The mid-90s Analog Productions reissue of Way Out West that I believe Doug Sax mastered this with tube gear. So Sonny Rollins' Way Out West. This is an incredible album. Probably one of his best albums. Okay, well, now we're diving into Blue Note stuff. Got a bunch of Blue Note stuff, mostly because the Music Matters stuff is just going away. Prices are rising, everything's going out of stock, resellers are gouging, so get them while you can, guys. Get the Music Matters stuff while you can, because they're not going to be around much longer. Although, here, I got one non-Music Matters Blue Note. Everyone always talks when they talk about Blue Note, people who really know the label well will talk about how Jimmy Smith made Blue Note what it is. and Jimmy Smith was the Alfred Lyon's favorite artist, etc., etc. And I didn't have any Jimmy Smith albums, so I got the Double 45 Analog Productions reissue of Midnight Special, Jimmy Smith. This is cool. This is like a very bluesy album. Blues is not always my forte, and it's not something I know a ton about, but I really enjoyed this. His organ sounds are really funky and eerie. It's cool. The rest of these are Music Matters. I just been hoarding Music Matters over the last couple months since about January. So what we got here? We got a really cool album that reminded me a lot of like the kind of thing Dave Brubeck would put out. This is Gil Mel, Patterns in Jazz, and this is one of the more unknown Blue Note albums that Music Matters has released. But this has Gil Mel playing the bari sax on it, and it's very much like that '50s kind of cool jazz, like academic cool jazz, like Dave Brubeck or Bill Evans, people like that. I definitely am reminded of a lot of that, and I think this is Gil Mel's only real big album that he ever put out. But I think he went into like film composition, and like he's an arranger and composer, and that's what he did for the majority of his career. I mean, you can't have Blue Note without Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, and this is the Jazz Messengers at Cafe Bohemia Volume 2, a live recording with the great early Jazz Messengers lineup: Hank Mobley on sax, Horace Silver on piano, Art Blakey on drums, and Kenny Dorham on trumpet. I need to get Volume 1 of this. I only have Volume 2. Speaking of Kenny Dorham, we have Kenny Dorham Afro-Cuban on Double 45. Probably my favorite trumpet player is Lee Morgan, and this is the 33 RPM reissue of Lee Morgan's Leeway, his 1960 album. Not my favorite Lee Morgan album, but it's really enjoyable because I just like the style that Lee Morgan has. Another Lee Morgan album, we got the Double 45 of Tomcat. Some Grant Green albums now. We got Grant Green Idle Moments. This is the 33 RPM edition. This sounds really good. And so does the next one I'm about to show you. Definitely audiophile picks. This is Grant Green's Matador. This one's interesting because it was never actually issued around the time it was recorded. It wasn't issued by Blue Note until the 70s, and not with this cover. So I don't know how they decided on this cover art, because it looks like the kind of Blue Note cover art that would have gone with other albums of that time. But because this was never released in the day, I don't know if this is what the artist originally intended. Who knows? But this sounds incredible. Got another 33 RPM. This is Horace Parlan's Speaking My Piece. I'm a little on the fence of Horace Parlan. A lot of people seem to have a lot of respect for him. I don't know if this album really did it for me. There's some good moments on it, but of all the ones I picked up, this is probably not my favorite. A pianist I really do like, though, is McCoy Tyner, and the real McCoy. I've had the Blue Note 75th anniversary digital pressing of this for a while. Didn't sound great, but it was great music, and I finally got the Music Matters, and I don't regret it at all. This is great jazz piano playing, really incredible. This is probably the only trombone album where the trombonist is the session leader that I own. This is I don't know how to pronounce his name because I've never heard it spoken, but I'm gonna go with Gretchen Moncure, the third Evolution. This is a cool kind of doorway into free jazz, just a little bit. It's got some out there stuff on it in the same way that Out to Lunch did, where it had some progressive moments in it. And of course it's got Lee Morgan playing trumpet, so. Not too many left. We got the 33 RPM of Little Johnny C. This has some cool moments on it. And Joe Henderson, who I'm really starting to get into lately. Joe Henderson's Double 45 of In and Out. I've really been liking his playing lately. I need to get Mode for Joe. I might not be able to get a Music Matters pressing because it's like long gone at this point, but I need to get some sort of pressing of Mode for Joe because I love this album, but I listened to that album and I really enjoyed that even more. And last but certainly not least, the saxophone player that led Blue Note for a number of years. This is Hank Mobley's Workout. You know, I really enjoyed Soul Station, and I enjoy Workout just as much. It's a great album. So that's it. I try to keep it relatively brief. There's going to be some cool stuff coming this summer. There's going to be some rearranging of systems and amplifiers, and my family's moving, and so some stuff is coming here to my apartment. Some stuff is going to be rearranged in the family's new house because the stereo is going to be in the living room now. I'll do a whole video on what's going on with that because there's some interesting changes happening with gear. So yeah, other than that, thanks for watching, VC. I'm sorry I haven't been making as many videos as I'd like to, but I work and I'm in grad school, so I have a limited amount of time available to me, especially to even listen to records. I've really only had time to really listen to records like this week and over spring break, and that's been it. So, but I'm getting my tonsils out this summer. So I'm going to be on the couch a lot recovering, and so I'm going to have plenty of time to listen to records. So I hope to do some more videos when I'm able to talk. Until next time, guys. Cheers.